So, who am I mentally? This is the question that will one day probably hit you. Can maybe happen at 14 if someone is speaking to you about philosophy, or if you start asking yourself an existential question or not. But there will be a question when you start comparing yourself with other people. You are a singular person. So who am I? Physically, obviously comes the next one. Who am I mentally? And whether you want it or not, you know that you have a certain tendency to be a certain way when exposed to a certain situation, right? And you've also observed people behaving differently in the same situation. Would it be your parents to start with, but then your siblings if you have any, or your family? Obviously, this is the first circles of life, and then comes school, and etc., etc. Now that brings me to something that I want to touch just after that on the social part of mental health, which is extremely important for the sapiens that we are. But before that, I want you to go through a journey, and this is a bit difficult because I will call it the journey of honesty. Am I honest with myself when I reflect on the way I behave in certain situations? Because that will give me the real hints about my wiring. Now, what is my wiring? I was saying before, obviously I was given some genetic predisposing code to code for my brain and therefore the beginning of mental health. Then, as we know, you've read, you've heard, a lot of it comes from my upbringing. How much attention, how much love, how much acknowledgement, how much encouragement, and how much care am I, and security. In care, I mean security. How secure I feel about being the way I am, and not secure about trying to be someone I'm not yet trying to fit in society. So before school, in the realm of your house, of your really nuclear family, how much of these am I given? Remember something really interesting about what we call the mirroring neurons. We have neurons. This is a great thing about Sapiens. This is why we're so good at learning, but also so good at teaching people, because we have a certain satisfaction when we see that what we're trying to transmit is taken in. And one very simple thing, try it if you have kids. When you come in the morning in the little room where your daughter or your son is sleeping and you wake them up, and or you try and feel how happy that makes you. It's such a nice privileged moment. You look at them, they slowly open their eyes, the first thing they see is you, and you're giving them all the love you have. It's in your eyes, it's in your smell, it's in your posture. Their mirroring neurons are taking this back, and what they're doing there, because they don't know, they're just mirroring back at you. They're learning how to use their happiness and their contentment from mirroring yours. So imagine how important it is during those years to be the one that gives it away. There's no bad things about telling people how much you love them. There's nothing bad that come out from you expressing overly the love that you have for very, very young kids. Now, when you carry on into your life, eventually you're exposed to social interaction. And that's the first bit. But you know that there is something interesting about, I try to bring this subject in, is when do we start thinking that other people think things about us? Now, that's a big, big thing. So again, if you look at very young toddlers, quite earlier on, they will do something and they will look back at you to see if you've seen them. So there's a certain feeling of being proud of having achieved something, or if they're naughty, they know it as well, yet of course. But also there's a satisfaction of them achieving something that obviously they know you've acknowledged. So they start thinking of a reaction within their mind and their body from what they read from yours. So there's a projection of their feeling coming from you. And that's something that will also wire into the way we're going to behave socially as sapiens. Now, as we are exposed to different situations, depending on what we were given genetically, depending on how much wiring, love, care, encouragement we were given, we're going to be exposed to other people that do not have the same love and care directly to us. They're just trying to gauge how much interaction we have. Now, this is the first time you go to nursery, let's say. Now, observe kids in there. It's incredible how they mimic what they would be given. You would know by observing kids in nursery roughly what's going on in their house. And this is quite incredible. If you have a chance to do this with your kids, please take a minute. You will be stunned on how clear this comes out. But more importantly, what happens then is that as you grow up through the little levels of school, you will get to know that some things really create anxiety in you, or a little fear. Some a bit more bossy already, some takes more space, or some are louder, some are more eager to go and connect with everyone, some are a bit more shy. Now, this is the foundation of who you are. Push this 10 years. You're now 9, 10, 11. A great place to be if you're in a nice household. It's really nice. People love you. You're curious. School is not too difficult. You're not too challenged. Maybe a bit of competition if you're doing sports, but that's pretty much it. Now you're about to turn into the very tricky situation of teenagers where you're going to be challenged inside out. We'll get this in another video. But right there and then, you already know, if you look back now as an adult at this time, you know the things that were making you happy, the things that were making you scared, the things that were making you anxious. And this is one exercise I want you to do if you can. Whatever age you are watching this video at, sit down, try and go back into your years 10 and 11 and try and figure, what kind of kid was I at this point? Do the practice and we'll talk about it in a minute.